Okay, we're live here with Bobby Richard. Um, it's John Richard, interviewing for a class on leadership and behavioral organizational management. Uh, Bobby, in your current role, can you tell us a little bit about your team, your culture, and some things that are really effective and challenging in your current role?
Yeah, so I guess starting with current role, I'm a project manager for a commercial general contractor. Duties can range pretty broadly, but I guess in essence, we're in charge of the schedule of the project and the budget of a construction project going from start to finish, and all the decisions that go from the start to the end of a job to make that happen on time. So our, I guess, going into team and Novo structure a little bit, we're still more of a smaller company. I mean, we're grown to 350 employees. So we're getting a little more corporate, but still a very flexible, very, I guess, very independent culture. Which is great. I mean, there's not overbearing oversight. There's not overregulation. It gives us the freedom to react quickly to situations and to resolve problems, really according to our best judgment. I guess I would define the culture as it falls under it's flexible, but there's support when needed, and it's very much of a work hard, play hard culture. Construction is pretty demanding a lot of times, but we also like to have our fun and go out and do happy hours and client events. So we get kind of, put in a ton of work, and then at the end of the week, lighten up on a Friday and have some beers at a happy hour. Yeah, it's a very it can be a very welcoming culture. It can be intimidating at first to new employees. The I mean, I would say that's kind of a challenge. I'm kind of going back and forth between different aspects of the culture, but I guess that flexibility can be simultaneously the most effective and the most challenging.
Right.
If you're effective, you get your freedom, but it is challenging, especially for those coming on early, to kind of learn your role when there's not like we don't have a Bible of rules that here's what project managers do. It's a lot of learn by experience, learning on the job, and that can be really challenging usually at the beginning.
The we'll come back to that a little bit on new employees because that's definitely something to consider when you're trying to grow with that kind of structure.
Mhm.
Um, Another question here. You're fairly senior in your role there at this point. Um, Thinking back to when you first became a manager, when you weren't just being told what to do at Novo, what was if you name one or two biggest misconceptions that you had about this is what management is versus what reality taught you?
Yeah, so I guess one I think that's pretty common, but I think definitely applied to me first becoming a manager is, as you grow in your role, you become more proficient as you go up the ladder. So for us as project engineer, assistant project manager, and then project manager, through those, and then there's other roles below. But as you go through them, you always have a project manager or executive above you, kind of watching your back, being the guardrails, and kind of telling you what to do, which can be helpful at times. But when you get towards the end of that period of what's called apprenticeship, um, the thought crossed your mind like, yeah, I can do all this on my own. I don't need someone telling me what to do or how to do it. Even if they're not micromanaging, if even if they're kind of doing it from afar. But when you first become a manager, just the I guess living with the consequences of your decision is a lot easier in theory, and then comes to when you come to practice and you make a lot of your first mistakes as a new project manager, then you realize the reality of those consequences really quickly.
Buck stops
So
with you in those cases. There's no one, no
yeah,
higher
there's
up to say it was his fault.
yeah, even if it wasn't you directly, it's still your fault because it happened in your job and you're in charge of the job.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so that was definitely a more of a burden than I thought it was going in.
Got it. Interesting. Um, Paring back down to people management at this level. At this time, you have a small team, I believe, that reports to you, or at least on certain projects.
Mhm.
Um, every organization has some people who are superstars and some people who are not, or at least varying degrees. How do you adapt your personnel management on your people or your subs when you're working with high performers or struggling performers?
Yeah, so with we'll start with the people on our team. There's, like you said, there's high performers, there's people that are learning and struggling. So I think, we tried as much as we can to vet people that we're hiring to
Right.
be people that have good attributes that, if they're struggling, hopefully it's because they're, maybe new at their role, or there's just they don't quite have the technical knowledge yet. So if it falls into that category, I think it's best for the whole team, for the senior leader to just spend more shoulder time with that employee, like maybe taking a day to, like, hey, telling them what they need to learn, and just leading by example, I find is the best way to help pull those guys along. And hopefully, if we've done our job vetting them, they have a good work ethic, they're willing to learn, and it's just a matter of plugging some gaps and taking the time to spend a day with them. Or maybe it's like, once a week we meet and kind of go over, all right, well, you're kind of overwhelmed, you're struggling, here's your task list for this week. Let's look at it next week. Then get to the next week, see how they did on their task list, coach them up on a few things. And I have found that to be successful, where, especially when the ingredients are right, hard worker just needs a little bit of help, they're getting overwhelmed in a new role.
Right.
um, just that extra shoulder time, even if that kind of drains more time from you, in the long term, it helps the whole team. Um, and then,
How about high performers on the other hand?
yeah, high performers. It's, uh, I try to, a lot of times my instinct is to jump in and micromanage sometimes, but especially over the last couple of years, it is more beneficial for those under me and myself to, like, take a step back and just know the essentials of a job, but leave it up to whoever's in charge, below me, and let them run with it. That way they can learn on their own, and it frees me up with more time to do other things. So if you worked with someone for long enough, they're a high performer, they're going to get the job done. It's really a win-win, or a win-win-win, in the words of the great Michael Scott, to just let them do their job and just check in, just keeping an eye on them, just really just the most essentials of the job. Anything that's, I guess, more of a taste, or more of, hey, I would do it this way, just just let that go. People have their own styles, and
Right.
um,
I'm
yeah. So
sure that could be
that's
tough. Sorry, go ahead.
no, that's all I was going to say.
I was going to say, I'm sure that could be tough. And, you were alluding to previously that you have kind of a not super heavy guardrail culture. It could be easy to have that, be something that gets in the way sometimes and be forced to micromanage. So I'm sure that could be tough to pull back. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Another thing you kind of mentioned just now, if the ingredients are right for, a good employee, what are the ingredients you're referring to? Like if you're hiring, or even if you're not, but to the extent that you were involved, what are the primary attributes that you look for in a new employee?
Right. So, and the ingredients will be a little bit different. We'll have half our staff is field staff, half is office staff. Usually, I'm more involved in hiring the office staff, but
And you can just touch on
um,
those in that case. Like,
yeah, I'll just stick with the office staff. I mean, the you know the education, technical knowledge. A lot of our interviews end up going towards that, because those things are easy to quantify for everyone, and it's easy to ask questions about those things, and you can put metrics on it, like do you know X, Y, and Z about this system or how to do this? And that's helpful. Like, you have to have some basic technical knowledge. But I mean, I think really, big picture, what we look for from an interview is work ethic and eagerness to learn.
Right.
And, I try to adapt my questions to try to get at that one way or the other. Like I said, it's hard to quantify. Like, how do you tell sitting down with someone for 30 minutes that you don't otherwise know? You check references, work history, all that goes into it. But ultimately, it is also something you have to pick up experience on when you're interviewing, like trying to boil down someone's attributes, especially for something that's, really important, but also hard to know if this person's a hard worker or not, if they are eager to learn or they're just giving you lip service. And they, some people interview really well and you get them on the job, and you're day two, you're asking, who interviewed this guy? Who let this person in? Yeah. Happens more often than we care to admit.
Sure. Well, hence the question about the struggling employees from before.
Right.
They probably weren't. They didn't know they were going to be struggling going in most of the time.
Yeah.
Um,
So
well,
I think
go ahead.
just to expand on that, one thing we don't always do this, because we're expanding a lot in Austin, but we do try as much as we can to promote internally, because I mean, that's really the only true way, unless you know and trust someone who's worked alongside this new prospect for a year or two. I mean, really, if you can promote internally as much as you can, you kind of eliminate that wild card. So easier said than done, especially if you have to expand and contract quickly. But we try our best to keep our teams consistent and just promote from within.
Yeah, very, very, very true. Last question here, and we just have a minute or two, and just whatever comes to mind. I'm sure you've had to face difficult ethical decisions in your role with customers or with teams. And you obviously have a very solid value base. What is something that's you've struggled with as a tough ethical decision you had to make and then justify to yourself?
Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I haven't had to make too many. There are, I think there's there's a classic example of, super high performers that are really tough to deal with. Kind of like the diva wide receiver that is always going to get you 1,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. It's you try not to have that. I mean, I think human nature is you do have a little bit of a dual standard in what that person's allowed to do. So I think just without getting too specific, just we've had those kind of in our world prima donna high performers that let's say get a HR complaint filed against them, whether from within or other contractors. You try your best to be fair, and ultimately loyalty is pretty big too, so we try to be objective, but also try to defend our guy. And kind of in this climate, people are pretty sensitive about those things, so it is, unless someone was there that saw the complaint, sometimes it is hard to distill what is true and what is maybe jealousy, or what is personal beef that someone can use an HR complaint to get at another person with.
Sure.
So those are kind of the more difficult decisions, and sometimes where it seems like there's no right answers, or like how could we really know the truth of what happened. Those are probably the most difficult ones, because ultimately no matter which way you decide, it's hard to know if you made the right answer, or you made the right decision or not. But yeah, I'd say that's the most murky and therefore difficult situations to deal with.
Great points. Well, hey, Bobby, thank you so much for the time and the illuminating answers. This has been a real treat to catch up and learn a little bit about what you do and some of the life lessons you've had in leadership and management. I'm going to go ahead and end the call here. If I can figure out
Thanks,
how to
John.
stop recording. Let's see. Record and transcribe. Stop recording. All right. Talk to you later, Bobby.
All right.